Please, and we'll begin our proceedings. Morena, and as before we get into our karakia this morning, could I just acknowledge the tragedy on Whakaari and also our neighbouring councils involved, Whakatane and Tauranga, and we extend our condolences to the families of those deceased and also those that are scattered all around New Zealand. In an incredible response, and thank those first responders for the way that they moved. And also on Monday there will be a CDM meeting in Whakatane that I'll be attending, and that's where we learn about civil defence and emergency management, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot there for us all to take note of. Could I welcome the public here today? Thank you for coming, and we've got some of our students on secondment over summer program with Lee. Welcome. And our police here today to help them with an item number 6, thank you, and staff and public, and all of those who are watching live stream. This is the last council meeting for this year. I didn't mention that the 2 police officers are Inspector Dunsmuir and Senior Sergeant Carl Cochliner. Is that right, Carl? Collector. Thank you. And Richard Horn and Kurt Williams are with you this morning. So I now remind people phones to just out of arm's reach, and we'll get a break for that, and that the meeting is being live streamed. So would I ask everyone, please, if you could stand, and Councillor Wang is going to open the meeting with the prayer.
Before I start with my prayer, I'd just like to continue on to what Her Worship has mentioned about the tragedy at Whakaari, also the fires in Australia and the Samoa epidemic, as well as the natural disaster that happened in the South Island as well. If we can keep them in our prayers and in our hearts, and hopefully they can get through this hard time. Almighty God, who alone is the leader of all mankind and the fountain of all knowledge, send thy blessing upon us, your servants, this day, as we strive to do all things good for the betterment of the people of the Rotorua district. May we be tolerant in ourselves at all times. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Very thoughtful. There is so much calamity happening globally and all around us. There are no apologies this morning, so we move on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Are there any urgent items not on the agenda? We will move on. The confirmation of the council minutes, and could I just say to staff, after the workshops and then the council meeting on the 5th and now subsequent, you have really all been exceptionally busy putting together the order papers to get them all out to us on time. Thank you for that. So do I have a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the council meeting on the 5th of December be confirmed as a true and correct record? Councillor McPherson, seconded Councillor Wang. Are there any corrections? Appear to be none. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. We move now to presentations on the inner city safety update that was called for, and Henry, you're going to present to begin with. Thank you. And could I just say, when Henry comes to the table, this is Henry's last council meeting, and Henry, we wish you well. I know personally that you're going to do an incredible job with your expertise and background moving into strategy and policy for Te Uru Rākau. And Henry has an exemplary background with conservation, so having learned about how a council works and now returning to a government department, we wish you well, and that is a very strategic department, especially with climate change and the tree program. So we wish you well and thank you for all the work that you've given here at Rotorua Lakes Council.
Thanks, Your Worship, and good morning, councillors. So look, really, I'll hand over to Kurt in a minute to just take us through a short presentation and then obviously open it up for discussion. But just to continue the introductions, on the far left we've got Senior Sergeant Carl Conlegner, who is the coordinator of the Community, Youth and Family Harm area of the police. Beside him we've got Inspector Ewan Dunsmuir, who's the Police's Crime Prevention Manager for the Rotorua District. Kurt and Richard probably don't need any more introduction, but Richard Horn in the middle there, who's our Inner City Manager, and Kurt Williams, who's our Community and Regulatory Services Manager. So look, I'll hand over to Kurt just to take us quickly through this presentation and then open it up for discussion.
Morena to Her Worship, councillors and members. Thanks for having us here this morning so we can run you through this short presentation on the inner city safety. So I guess starting with a little bit of background is always a good place to start. And a joint statement was released back on 12th of December 2018. And at that stage that announced that we were, as council, going to join forces with the police for what we termed at that stage a summer CBD safety campaign. And that was in an effort to turn the tide on some of the antisocial trends that we were seeing in the CBD at that stage. That campaign, while reduced somewhat, continued over the winter period as well. So I think what was recognised at the time is that the summer period and extended daylight hours are fantastic for our tourists and residents, but it also does provide additional opportunities for antisocial and criminal behaviour to, I guess, step into that ring as well. That, of course, negatively impacts individuals and our beautiful city's reputation as well, which is something that none of us want. So the objective behind the safety campaign was to ensure that our city is a safe and attractive place for both locals and visitors. One of the other points here, I think, is that a recent increase in inner city accommodation provided by MSD has actually led to some increased levels of concern. So I think just the next picture basically says it all. This is what a joint patrol approach to us looks like and what we've been trying to achieve and maintain throughout this period, where we don't have separate security firms and separate guardians and separate police. The success of this campaign is all about the joint approach and those links that we have together. So that is similar to what you will see walking around the streets, particularly as we head into the busier summer period. So our response to date with this program, we've definitely had considerable investment and a number of initiatives on council and the police's side. And of course, with that, a lot of ongoing enhancements which we're continuing to add, and that's basically in response to any trends that we see, or as the case may be, don't see over time. We've definitely had an increased presence of police, safe city guardian and security staff during the day and night, 7 days a week, so that we can provide that joined up approach that you've just seen on the in the previous slide, with the overall aim of zero tolerance towards antisocial behaviour. Our joint communications between the council and security staff and the police, along with our rostered hours and patrolling areas, provide a high level of visibility and coverage for the purposes of deterrence and detection. So our guardians and security personnel also attend the police intel meeting once a week, which is a great way of making sure that everybody is on the same page about any pressures that happen from day to day or night to night. Very importantly too, we have increased the monitoring of council's CCTV network, so we've actually got a whole other staff member in there these days to extend our capacity in that field. Of course, it's difficult to get complete and total coverage, but we're stretching that as much as we possibly can at this point. The CCTV network is extremely important for prevention purposes, with the aim of that being that things are able to be spotted, reported through a central point through good comms channels, and with hopefully the need for no further intervention needed, or minimal intervention where possible. And that does remain extremely crucial going forward. As part of the processes, we have refined the trespass procedures to help with stamping out a certain level of antisocial behaviour where deemed appropriate. We've definitely also had a wider focus on increasing activation in the CBD with the aim of the more people with good intentions in a certain place, hopefully the less desirable it is for those with not so good intentions to be in that same space. And that also has helped to bring about, particularly in some areas, more positive change in the way our inner city is being used and viewed. We've also started some combined on-street surveys, which has been focusing on the vibrancy, safety and cleanliness of the city, as that definitely forms part of that bigger picture. So just a little bit on statistics, and I know that some of you may have seen, I think when we first kicked off the campaign in December and January last year, we gave a very brief snapshot at that time of, I think, what the initial observations were. Just for clarity, so these statistics here are now running in conjunction with the financial year, so that's from the 1st of July through until this Tuesday is what you're seeing here. There will be a very few minor things in there from outside the CBD, but given that the majority of our cameras are actually located in the CBD, by default this report reflects what we see through there. So I know the font's very small, apologies for that, but I think there's some good information in there as far as the total amount of this is times where something has come in through the CCTV, our CCTV room, that has required an action of some sort. So that action may be a referral to the staff on the street, maybe a direct referral straight through to the police, or it could be taking a photograph just to keep on top of who's in town that we have any suspicions about at any point in time. So the busiest day of the week is still trending to be a Saturday. The most reported incident is a 1C, which translates to suspicious person. The most active issue or identifying group, we're still seeing most of those things coming in through the CCTV room itself being observed. And the most reported incident outcome is the taking of a photo, just in case it's needed for any reason. So I think when you're looking at those bar graphs, there's a couple of interesting things in there. If you're looking at the reported incidents side of things, the bar down the bottom, that's our suspicious activity or person bar. So again, that's I think a good prevention message that these people with potentially ill intentions are being spotted. The incident outcome graph directly under that has some other interesting trends. So last time, I think for those of you that may have had the privilege of seeing that presentation, the K1 code, which is no further police action required, was a lot larger than what it currently is. This time around, that sort of flipped around with our CCTV monitoring staff actually taking photos, which links with the suspicious activity bar in the graph above it. And I think that's quite a good story to tell, that we know that people are being spotted. We also know that we've had a reduction in the amount of times people have been spotted and it's been deemed to require police intervention. So that hopefully gives you a little bit more detail about some of the stats that are being collected. Just as a bit of a summary, I think the joint approach and response, we are continually and constantly monitoring and reassessing that. That's from a day-to-day and week-to-week basis, linking back into those Intel attendances as well. And of course that includes our security partners who are very important in this mix, and naturally the police as well. And we definitely want to continue working on these long-term actions as a collaborative group. So the current approach, we're definitely anticipating that to continue at this point in time. And as I've just said, we'll definitely continue to adjust that. And importantly, we can scale that up and down as warranted. I think that's evidenced in the slight backing off through the winter period when there just wasn't quite as much going on, and the current view that we just need to be re-looking at that again now. Interestingly, when we're looking from a reported stats perspective, we're not actually seeing any obvious upturn in antisocial behaviour in the inner city, but the perceptions of safety, for whatever reason, don't appear to be improving, and I think that's quite a key point. Really importantly, I think from all of our agencies' side too, is that this isn't just an issue for council and the police and our patrollers on the street to resolve. We need active participation by the retailers and the public to make sure that they are reporting suspicious or antisocial behaviour immediately, so that it actually can be dealt with appropriately. As much as people may want to let us know after the fact, we just cannot deal with things that we don't know about or aren't reported at the right time. So I think that's probably a plea that we would put out to those that have concerns to make sure that they're using those links. And probably now appropriate to open it up to some questions.
No, I'll save mine till last. Questions, Councillor Peter Bentley, Raj Kumar, I'm sure we'll all be wanting to say something, but questions first rather than statements, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just addressing the panel, the fact of an incident earlier this week that took place, and the people that were involved in the incident left after 30 minutes. 30 minutes after the emergency call centre had been rung and no police had turned up at that stage. Does this reflect that, do you think, a very good service you're offering?
With regards the incident that we probably referred to last week in Tūtanakai, the inner CBD has always been a focus for us to try and get to and police quite well, because some of our metrics for police are trust and confidence, our response times, and our the perceptions of safety. Well, we read into these data sets within perceptions of safety quite deeply. And it's important for us, the police, to be able to respond when we can. One of the things that we do have to, I guess, do as a police service is triage the demand that we do have at any given time. And it's not a case that if something comes up in a CBD or any other part of Rotorua, that we simply don't attend, but we do attend when we can based on the triage and the volume of work that we have at that very time. So I think possibly the 30 minutes time scale at that time of day, at that time with everything else that was going on, is probably unfortunate. I certainly know that if the demand placed upon police resources at that time had not been as it was, we probably would have been able to have responded quicker.
Do you have any further questions, Councillor? No?
You better Mayor at this stage, no.
Councillor Kumar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kurt, for your statistics there. I was more interested, I think, and I can see where that's coming from, but my question is rather based around probably an incident that happened last year, but in the same person's come back and reported that incident rather than anyone else that's come over, and I think in this case it's Reg Hennessy, probably just close to Christmas as well, and it's highlighted the fact that there's danger in the city, and he's also spoken about empty shops, which is probably not a correlation with it. But is this a group of youths, or is this a group that is actively operating and is a source of concern rather than an organized gang? But it doesn't seem like. It seems like there's just a group of disorientated youths that are going over and just traumatizing some shops, And I think the other thing that we've touched on, which I'd like to talk is the MSD situation of whether it's homelessness or beggars that are hanging and loitering into city outside businesses, and because businesses feel that these people outside their business are not a good image for their business, I think are these factors all contributing to to this issue coming at hand? Because the other issue that was, yeah. Yeah. The other thing that was of main concern is that Reg Hennessy has mentioned in this time that there were knives involved. Can you comment on that, please?
So just give us an overview of the incident and the response. That would be helpful to us all.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. Yeah, there were two incidents, one Monday, one Tuesday, involving groups of youths in the CBD after hours. Maybe if I can start with our response first. So we have extra patrols rostered for late shifts from our youth aid section for tonight and tomorrow as a direct response to that incident. There were some youths apprehended who had known to us. Some of them already been highlighted through the care and protection because of their age. Some of them already known to us through youth justice, slightly older. So there were people apprehended on that one on Tuesday night. Yeah, the one on Tuesday was quite serious. There was cutlery picked up from a pizza restaurant and threats made to the staff. I'm not actually aware of what the other demands were on our services at that time, but certainly there were youths picked up. You touched on a couple of other things about youths in the CBD.
Kurt, if you could give the overview, because we've talked about working together, how did that together response respond to that incident?
Sure. Would it be okay if Richard Horn actually answered that?
Well, anybody who knows.
Sure.
So I guess the initial response from our end, we had up to 5 staff that were already on the streets.
In a city he manages.
So our inner city safety patrol teams, we had 5 on the ground. They were in the area and were able to respond within a couple of minutes of being there. So what they did do is, because obviously we don't have the same powers at all with police, but they maintained a presence and they maintained direct communications back via our CCTV room, who were then talking with police as well as to what was going on. And they were at the same time also gathering intel. So everyone carries body cameras. They had those body cameras going right from the very start of that incident, and then including CCTV footage and photo shots as well. So that was our initial response, and we stayed there until police arrived.
So that was the integrated response?
Yes.
And that was within a matter of minutes, was it?
They were already on Tatanakai Street, not
Right.
too far down the road from there.
Thank you. And now to the other issue that you raised, Councillor Kumar, about young people and in general.
So yes, youth do present a problem for us in the CBD, excuse me. And we have a large youth aid team that work both in the care and protection side and the criminal justice side. You mentioned there MSD, and this has become an issue for us, particularly in the last year, with emergency housing in the CBD and the environs around that. And we have seen a flow-on effect from that, where you have displaced youths banding together and coming into town, creating their own entertainment. It's not what we view as entertainment, but in speaking to these youths, certainly that's how they see it. Not only these sort of disorder events, but we've noticed a trend too with youths stealing cars in town and trying to bait police into police pursuits. So that's a very disturbing trend for us, because obviously at that young age they've no thoughts of the consequences of their actions.
Is it worse over school holiday periods, or is it just generally throughout the year?
Certainly your school holiday periods and the summer period. So in response to that, we have a summer holiday policing program, which started at 1st of December. So we have extra staff rostered onto beat in town, and then after hours on the weekends we have an overlap of shifts where they have more time to do proactive work, again centred on the CBD.
Just supplement. Thank you. Just supplementary to that. But this, even though there's extra petrol around town, we seem to be hearing that these concerns are coming mainly from one quarter or one sector of the CBD. So how are we going to appease to them? Because the affected party seems to think that it's the council's responsibility. So where does the burden lie? Does it lie with the council or does it lie with the police? Even though I can see that they are secured partners approach into this, because the council can only police the law, we can only pass the policy. The police are still actively involved in arresting and doing everything. So where does the responsibility lie, and why is that only one sector seem to be complaining more or aggrieved more than anybody else?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely a shared responsibility. We talk regularly about the powers that the city patrollers have and the powers that the police have. So where arrest action is needed, that certainly falls well within the police spectrum. But the increased presence on the street and what I call professional witnesses, which are the guardians and the security patrols, they certainly increase our coverage. As to why there's greater reporting in one area or another, I can't answer that. I could speculate, but that's all it would be.
Just on the geographical element of what the CBD is and where the problems arise, if we look holistically at what Rotorua is, where it is, what the main attractions within Rotorua are for these youth, if we apply crime science to it, I'm not going to say it is a crime corridor, but we apply a crime corridor philosophy where we've got attractions such as the lakefront, Eat Street, the green grass at the front, and also the shopping centre up the trying to get my geography right, the east end of town. The path between the shopping centre and the lakefront is Tūtanakai, and I think it's probably Tūtanakai geographically you're referring to.
Yes.
We have a lot of youth traffic on Tūtanakai going between these two attractions for, as Carl said, entertainment, their entertainment, not ours. And I think if we look at the saturation of calls for service, demand and crime, we can probably nucleate that on that crime corridor or that perceived crime corridor. And it's simply a matter of regress from one site to another and cause chaos along the way. So we are certainly looking at patrolling that because we do know the data. We do know the hotspots over 7, 14 and 28 days. And we do know seasonally as well that does get exacerbated during school holidays, which probably fits within that theorem of crime corridor application, probably.
Then there are others I've got all listed here. Is this worse than it has been at this season other years?
No, the statistics that we keep, there's no major trends. There's minor blips, but not majorly worse or majorly better than previous years. And
do you ever encourage custodians or retailers where there are hotspots in those zones to pay for their own security? Or is that something that I hear this, council sorted out, police sorted out? Is there a need for heightened attention, as I know in some cities pharmacists and others are now getting their own security? Is that something we should look at?
Thanks, Honourable Mayor. We've been having some conversations this last little while more with the retail sector.
Yep.
And within that retail sector, we're quite happy to patrol, encourage reporting within a public sector. One of the movements that we've seen of recent times is that very thing. Retailers wishing police to sort out the problems that they've got internally within their stores, within their platform. We're pushing back a little bit on that as we're there to support them. But whether or not individual shops such as, let's use Hennessy's, which was mentioned before, have to supply their own security, they do have an obligation to look after their patrons as well. And we are having some conversation with them on that, but to be honest, not in licensed premises. We operate through the day. Yes, at night, where there are potentially more numbers of patrons and bigger risk. But it's probably something we need to explore a little bit further with them.
McPherson, and then Councillor Rokawate.
Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen. Very interesting report. And I'd like to start before my question by acknowledging the hard work that's been done on our policy front as well as the active policing front and the joint patrols. Pretty solid effort, and I really appreciate that. My question goes to the nature of the joint approach and response. Overall, it's a strategy. It's been a strategy. It's been developing. I first became sort of acutely aware and involved in this about a year ago, and there's been a collection of data since and various methods tried, and there's been a process of continuous improvement of that strategy. But my question is this: do you think it might be time for the agencies involved to step back and conduct a strategic evaluation of the strategy itself to see if there are ways and means of further improving what you're doing, taking probably advice, taking evidence from strategies used or trialled elsewhere?
I'm sure they do.
In other words, my question is this: will we, in a year's time, be addressing these exactly the same questions? Or is it now time for a strategic evaluation of the strategy itself? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. We've been doing a little bit of work with within our police reporting line with Police National Headquarters from Wellington, and within Rotorua we're just about to adopt and embark upon a programme of what we call hotspot policing, and that's a very strategic viewpoint that's based on some evidence-based solutions from overseas, or from UK and Canada. As far as the collaboration, I think, between council and police school, we're certainly very keen to try and work with council to try and review strategies as to how we move forward. With regards the problem getting worse or not, the stats indicate that there are tolerable levels from one year to the next. What we have picked up on from a more longitudinal trend is that 2 years ago we had a bigger problem than we had last year, and this year it's tracking to be roughly about the same as last year. So one of the things, we had a discussion yesterday about looking at the year-on-year comparisons, and that's quite a rabbit hole for us to go down. So that if we look at year-on-year crime comparisons, if we have a good year, we're going to be red next year, green the following year, red the next year, green the following year. So we've got to be longitudinal, have a strategy to try and deal with this moving forward. I think with our response to it, with our extra patrolling and our directed patrols to that crime corridor hotspotting that we know we have, and also I think trying to encourage other people to increase the reporting, which is not good for stats, but it's good for prevention. And I think if we can speak regularly with the council, which we're doing over the summer months and beyond, that'll go some way to try and put in place some kind of crime prevention strategy for us and the council.
Yes, we're certainly concerned, but we're very aware of this joined-up approach. And I'm aware that it's been a problem for 6 years. Every Christmas we have the same question, but now we've got a much better response than we used to have. Councillor Rokawate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it has been a number of years now, and I'm actually rather frustrated with what I've heard this morning. Thank you. So I'll certainly keep most of my comments for later. But just one question. You are the police. Why aren't we taking a zero approach to youth behaving badly in the CBD? A zero approach to youth behaving badly in the CBD.
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance. Zero tolerance to youth behaving badly. Forget the antisocial behaviour. It's youth behaving badly. Mostly Māori. In fact, I see very few. I see only Māori. So why aren't we taking a zero tolerance approach to that instead of waffling around with everything else here?
What you might not see is what is actually done with youth behind the scenes, and some of the alternative resolution programs that we have in place. There's some very good non-police providers.
I know all that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you'd expect to be done with the youth.
Were arrests made at the incident?
Yes, I'm aware of one arrest being made of a youth. But arrest now for youth is, that's at the end of the chain.
Yes.
So where once upon a time, and I've been in the police a few years now, we used to carte blanche arrest youth across the board. That didn't work because of the very nature of the youth. That's not a successful outcome for the youth, and actually just introduces them into the criminal justice system. So alternative resolution for youth now is where we start, and arrest is at the far end of it.
Thank you. And the one other question I have, with the joint approach that's been operating for the last 12 months, do you actually go, have we spoken to the to the retailers and the business owners in the CBD to say, in the last 12 months, have we been effective in this joint approach? Have we actually been effective? We think you probably have been, you think, but have you actually asked the retailers and the shopkeepers in the CBD? Has it been effective, and is it sustainable?
Probably Richard to answer.
Yes, so at an individual level, we are continuously talking with business owners. I think what we don't have, and we've lost over the last few years, is the ability to talk to a wider group within the city. But our guardians and patrollers will have verbal contact with all business owners throughout the week and daily. So they're always continuously calling in. So, and we get lots of feedback. The majority of feedback that I personally get is one that people are grateful for their presence and they appreciate what the teams are doing. And I mean, you're always going to get a little bit of negative feedback when something happens. We can't control those individual persons, or it only takes one group of people, one person, to create different issues right throughout the inner city over a period. So we are continuously talking with business owners daily, yes, including myself at an operational level within the inner city as well.
Councillor Dave Donaldson, then Tanya Tapsell, and then Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of my questions, I think, has been answered, and that's the responsibility of licensees on licensed premises. But just for clarification, Kurt, the footpath areas in each street in front of licensed premises and also in the likes of Hennessy's, are they licensed premises that the licensee has a responsibility for, I guess, behavioural aspects, mainly of their patrons, not so much people coming onto there? And then my other question was for probably Inspector Dunsmuir, was in terms of triaging or prioritisation of incidents, where does antisocial behaviour in the inner city sit in comparison to domestic violence? That's my question.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. So the answer around the licensed premise side of things is yes, if alcohol is being served in that area, that must form part of that licensee's or the licensed premise.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have
Thanks, Dave. There's two different metrics, I guess. One for one of the big things for us is that perception of safety. I'm trying to think holistically beyond the realms of police here, and we spoke yesterday about Destination Rotorua. So when we look at Destination Rotorua, it's pivotal for A Council and B to get that stuff right in and around the CBD. We do have a massive demand in family harm. That also is very important. So if we were looking at trying to draw the line between triaging a serious family harm incident and disorder that wasn't yet criminal, was just nuisance, it would probably be prioritised to family harm, to be honest. If we have a demand that we can cope with and we have jobs that came in at the likes of Hennessy's last week, we would absolutely respond to that, because we've got threats of violence, we've got disorder, we've got disorderly assembly and lawful assembly. We've got legislation to deal with that, so we would certainly approach that problem with some priority where we had the demand, capability to do that. But we actually have both units assigned to CBD, but we also have units assigned to family harm as well. So in an ideal world, we should, depending on demand, be able to deal with both.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that probably answered my first question, which was just around balancing the resources, and I want to acknowledge the very hard work that your team does to keep all of our families safe, because the first question that I was thinking about was you're balancing resources, and what is that balance between keeping our inner city safe from a perception perspective compared to keeping our families safe in their very own homes? So has domestic violence and the increase of domestic violence stretched your resources? The second question that leads on to the value of the inner city guardians. Have the inner city guardians brought value in terms of reducing those numbers, but from a relationships perspective? Obviously, the inner city guardians don't have the power and ability that you do to make arrests, but they do have the power and ability to make relationships with people and actually help them from a supportive, proactive perspective. And then the third question, which is also connected, is where is the connection to the support services as well? You know, we're doing the best we can, but a lot of the people that you're coming across do have mental health issues or drug addiction issues. So are we making sure that those people are in a safe way being guided to services that will help them to help themselves and get off the streets and cause harm to our people?
Certainly, if I can start with your first question, the family harm, yes, we have seen an increase in family harm. I think when I spoke to the councillors a few weeks ago, we just had a record week of 103. The sad fact of that is we had that surpassed last week with 105. So it's 105 reports in a week of family harm. Now they range from low, medium to high is how we grade them. Rotorua has the highest percentage of high for the whole Bay of Plenty. So yes, there's some serious demand on us for family harm. Does that take away resources from the CBD? Absolutely. Sorry, your second question?
That second question was just, is there a pathway, or do you, when you pick up people that are causing issues, do you guide them towards support services? Bearing in mind a lot of them, from what we've been told, do have mental health and potentially drug addiction issues as well.
Yeah, so that is certainly probably the biggest change I've seen in the time I've been in police, where once upon a time there was only criminal justice system. They were arrested, put before the court. So now alternative resolution is very large, and we have quite a range of government and non-government agencies who we can refer to for any type of thing, whether it comes from people driving without a driver's licence. We can steer them now, instead of grading criminals from them, steer them down to a group who will actually help them get a driver's licence. Addiction, family harm, welfare services, health services, they're all, we meet daily in the family harm space. We have a daily meeting at the station of all those independent groups. Once upon a time, police tried to do some of that stuff by themselves. Now we've realised that we're not capable of doing that, so we have a daily meeting on that, and if you have further interest in that, I'd be happy to show it to you. So. Thank you. Yeah, it was vacant for a short time, but we do have one now. Operates basically from the custody hub. And sorry, the third question was the effectiveness of the guardians. And yeah, what I've seen is a fantastic working relationship with the guardians. They certainly are, the way I see them, as our eyes and ears, extra boots on the ground. We have our weekly meeting, but Richard and I are meeting a lot more often than that. And now we have direct line of communication to what I think you call the fishbowl here, to our district command centre. So we have a direct line of communication after hours where we can see early dispatch to jobs. Talking about the disorder that you mentioned earlier, I don't know what the other response was. On Monday night, I did have a look at some of the units that responded. I know the two first responding units were both road policing units that would normally be out on the highways. So that indicates to me that the other units are probably tied up somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is related to an incident at a local retailer's along Tanakai Street, where youth were known to the City Guardians, and at that stage, because of their age, the retailer had been they'd been identified to the retailer that these are known youth who've been caught for shoplifting. My question around this is what does the role of the City Guardian actually have in a situation like that? Because the retailer was basically informed they're too young. One of them was 8, the other one was about 10 or 11, but they were just too young to be dealt with. So what's the role of the City Guardian? Because I think, yes, we're talking about relationships, and it is key that the retailer knows what their responsibility is in that situation.
Thank you. So the role of the Guardians, not even with just that type of situation, all situations, is to maintain a presence and gain intelligence for police, and then direct communications back to the CCTV, our fishbowl room, who are in direct communications with the police as well. But in those situations, definitely to gain as much intel as possible, so that when police are able to respond or they can follow it up later, they've got as much information as possible to then follow through the next process.
If I just talk about the very young shoplifters, and they do present a problem, so they don't fall under criminal justice, but we do look at it as a care and protection issue. So when kids that young are out shoplifting, we do have a youth development section as part of our youth aid section. So often these kids are picked up by police and taken home, which is not necessarily that effective, but it's always followed up the next day by the youth development section, who then do a home visit. And that's where we try and look at the other broader issues about whether at school and what the home situation is.
Thank you very much. My question is more also on our support that our council is giving through our, we call them ambassadors out there. But so, can I ask on the CCTV work, do we still have a healthy pool of volunteers that are going through the cameras at given times?
So there has been a few changes over the years in regards to CCTV monitoring. So we've brought that all back in-house. We've got 2 full-time paid council staff members. So we have no volunteers at the moment for CCTV, and I don't think that's necessarily something that we've even looked at going back to with volunteers, just because of what's involved and what they have to do. So if we're better to have full control over the CCTV side of it. Yeah.
So just to further on that as well, with the CCTV platform, we've got our district command centre based in the station just over the road here, and we do work in partnership quite healthily with the CCTV system. We can take control of that. We're in liaison with CCTV controllers all the time, and I know that we provide a 16/7 service, 16/7 service for police within the command centre. And one of the healthy things, I guess, for Rotorua is that most of the staff for the district come from Rotorua who have a vested interest in Rotorua. So whenever I go into the DCC, it's a district function, but the CCTV cameras are always on Rotorua. Very rarely Whakatane, it's very rarely Tauranga, it's always Rotorua. So they actually have I think, a healthy working relationship with CCTV operatives from council, and it seems to work really well. It does work well.
And all councillors have been offered to go and have a look at the control centre. You call it the fishbowl. Yeah, so those who haven't, you're welcome. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report, and thank you for keeping our district safe. My question was, are we seeing the same groups of youth constantly involved in this social behaviour? And if we are we directing them into youth programs, or working with the youth centre? Because for some of the youth, they've grown up in these environments, and that's the environment that they've always known. So how are you working in preventing them from actively coming back into this environment?
Thank you. Yeah, certainly there are a core of youth that are well known to us. And if I could maybe just even briefly talk about the CCTV operators that the council have. You've got two very good operators there who have very good recognition of faces and names. I must confess, I can't match it. So almost photographic memory for the faces and the names, and that works particularly well for us. So they're actually able to name some of these youths. So yes, some of them are well known to us. Some of them are well engaged with our services, either in criminal justice or in the care and protection side, depending on the age. Yeah, there's quite a lot happens behind the scenes as far as care and protection of these youths. Obviously, work quite closely with Oranga Tamariki. But again, I'd extend to you an invitation if you would like to meet with the youth aid team and maybe hear in some depth about the type of programs that are run for these kids. Be more than happy to facilitate for you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to that statement up there, there's been no obvious upturn in antisocial behaviour, but the perceptions of safety do not appear to be improving. Because of this joined-up approach, what is the communication strategy to not only the CBD retailers, because obviously those that seem to be most vocal get the front page headlines, but how do we communicate with not only the CBD but the public that come into the CBD and also the tourists that are coming to Rotorua if there's this perception that they're not going to be safe there when we're saying that that's actually not really the case?
Maybe I'll start off with that one. And you have identified something that we do need to keep looking at. As we've said, we're not seeing in the stats any obvious increase in terms of actual crimes being committed. But we totally acknowledge that perceptions of safety aren't changing. And one of the things we're doing at the moment is spending a bit of time with on-street surveys. So we're actually doing a lot of work with visitors, people in the street and retailers to just try and dig down into understanding what is driving these issues of perception. And look, we know some of it is driven by people just hanging out in the street, sleeping on the street, sitting on the curbs, coming out of the MSD accommodation. A lot of that isn't criminal behaviour, but it certainly adds to a perception of people feeling unsafe. But first, and I guess almost in response to Councillor McPherson's comment, I think it is the element we need to be reviewing. We need to be really understanding how we can first understand where that perception is coming from, and I think we kind of feel it, but we don't know it, and then actually start addressing it, because for us, in terms of the vibrancy of the inner city, and as the Inspector said, the destination Rotorua and the reputation perception is actually almost as important as the reality. If people feel unsafe, that's a real issue for our place. So I guess it's a slightly indistinct answer, but it's saying, look, we recognise perception is something we need to hit, but we really need to understand what is driving it.
So, Henry, my question is, when we can get this housing plan, will we be able to address that night shelter?
There are constant conversations with the operator of the night shelter in terms of looking for alternative venues. I don't know if we're totally convinced that the night shelter is driving the perception any more than the MSD accommodation, the increase of others in the streets who have been placed there by MSD, I think are leading probably more to the perception issue. There are certainly more numbers of people who have been relocated into town through that program than there are in the night shelter. But certainly the operator of the night shelter is conscious, again, I'll keep calling it perception, it may be more than that, of the issue, and he wants to work with us to solve it, and he doesn't think they're in the right place at the moment.
That's great to hear, thank you. Right, well, that's everybody who's asked questions. Thank you for this. We were scheduled to hear about what is the summer safety program. We sort of understand it as that, and I've heard about this my last issue is with the incident that was given such, a focal point and also politically used. Is there going to be a follow-up meeting with Mr. Hennessy? Or has that already occurred?
Yeah, we have sent our youth aid sergeant, who I think has a personal relationship with Mr. Hennessy. He has been to see him yesterday.
Thank you. Dave, did you have a question? No? Okay. Well, you can make a comment and then we must move on. We've got a big agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Look, again, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the statistics. And I don't want to be a Pollyanna about this at all. That was an ugly video that we viewed in terms of Tourism Inc. and Rotorua Inc. But it's not a Rotorua problem alone. It's a national problem, antisocial behaviour. And, I've been policing on the streets of Rotorua since 1969. The only thing that's changed really is we don't have the big booze barns with the whole of Ottawa Street closed while the police tried to sort out the after the closing time scrap. But we have twice as many people in our country, and we have social issues, and those social issues are not going away. If anything, they're increasing. So what I saw in that video, as well as some behaviour that's a complete turn-off for tourists, was a great piece of work by the security people. I take my hat off to them. They managed it calmly, and it didn't get out of hand. I read the body language on the patron who sat there with his beer and didn't bat an eye throughout the whole incident till the video ended. So I just think from that perspective, the fact that the security people were there within 2 minutes gives me some reassurance that council has the right level of resourcing and support on the streets. And look, just last night at a function, I spoke to two women on the board of Women's Refuge who support what Senior Sergeant Conlington is saying about the level of domestic violence the police are trying to manage with their resources. So policing resources, that all boils down to it's a political issue. It's going to be a political issue over the next year. I'm well aware of that. Again, I've got confidence in the fact that police are managing their resources as best they can for the issues that we as a community face.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And it's because we have questions and then we sort of run short on making comments, that I do want to just say that, when we, now we've got a lot of people in our motels, which is giving us a bad rap. We've got now this problem, but actually it's not a large problem in terms of the number of people, in terms of the number of young people. And so the police have always had limited resources to apply to some things, so have we, so has council. But I'm just saying, if we don't do something different from what we've done in the past, we're going to be listening to the same issues next year. And I think that I've heard what you've had to say. I've heard what you direct and get people to self-refer. Young people won't self-refer, let me tell you that. We just need to have a different approach. Otherwise, and it is actually saying to parents, get your kids out of the city. That's really it. Why can't we be honest and say, keep your children at home? We don't want them in the city. They're making trouble, and it should be as plain as that, so that we do see something different. But it's not a good look. And I do go into the city, and Mr. Hennessy has said to me often, he said, you're about the only one I see around. I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. But however, it's not. And it's not only during the day now, it's stretching really, really into the evening hours as well. So thank you for your work, but I just think we need to look at some different approaches as well coming summer. Thank you.
Well, that's sort of the joined-up approach that we're talking about with young people, which is a different issue than what was manifest here over this summer program. Councillor McPherson?
Thank you, Your Worship. On reflection, it seems to me that we've got a program here which has been pretty effective in holding the line, but the data itself that has been shared indicates the situation is no better, it's no worse, but it's a holding operation. And what concerns me is that this particular arena of policy making and action is being disconnected from other very serious issues about the CBD. We need to stem the departures. The businesses are despairing. We need to reform the parking. We need to repopulate the CBD. In fact, what I'm looking for here, how can a strategic review here be connected up in our work with all the other things we want to do to rescue the CBD? Thank you.
Well, that's a wider issue again that all of us agreed and set the priority about creating a livable city. We signed that off last week at the last council meeting. So those issues all sit in that strategy plan that we've all agreed is a top priority for us. I also want to add that I'm not sure how many councillors know about the Pūtaki Nui, which was launched, spoken about, which was the sort of strategic approach that was developed by the Working Together group around young people to give them hope and opportunity, and not always a punitive approach. I'm not going to tell my grandchildren not to come into the city, but they're young. Well, who knows, who knows. But I think there is a strategy about young people, and it was done with our community providers, with council involvement. It's a wonderful strategy, and it was launched 3 weeks ago. So I think we need to all be made aware of what that is too. So I thank you for coming. It was really helpful for us. We've heard from some. Do we need a bit more of a disruptive approach and having a look at other aspects of a strategy, particularly around the perceptions of our people feeling safe and our visitors feeling safe. But I thank you for what you're doing, and the response that I saw to one incident I thought was very appropriate at all levels. But, it's an easy thing to use, and we're going into a very challenging year, so I'm sure it will be an issue much wider. But those that call for councillors to resign over this is rather peculiar. So thank you for coming, and it's been very helpful for us all. And there's some other opportunities for us to have a look at the youth strategy, what happens to these young people, and also look at our fishbowl, as you call it. So thank you, and I hope we have a peaceful summer. Thank you. Yes.
My apologies, Your Worship. Just as we move on with the agenda, under apologies, I just wanted to signal an early departure for another council representation at Sion. Have to leave at 12 o'clock if possible.
Right, so we need to keep moving. Thank you, and I think this Councillor Yates.
Kia ora, Mayor Chadwick. Yes, if I may be able to leave by 1, that would be great.
We must hold a quorum, that's all. We must hold a quorum, and it'll be urgent items. So we move now to staff reports, 7.1, page 18 in your agenda. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report, that the report appointment of council representation to the Lakes Community Board and the Rural Community Board be received? Thank you, Councillor. Moved Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Wing. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Una, would you like to review the report?
Good morning, councillors. So just wanted to briefly say here that the next couple of items or suite of papers coming before you really do follow the council meeting held last week. So these are the final papers that then build and establish that decision-making framework for the next triennium. And so the first one that we have in front of us today is the council representation to the Lakes Community Board and to the Rural Community Board. The membership of the community board is, of course, 4 members who are elected from the constituents within the lakes or within the rural zones, and 1 council representative. The community boards have now all met, and in discussions amongst themselves, they have put forward names which you have in front of you today. So the report is looking that Council adopt Councillor Tanya Tapsell as the Council representative to the Lakes Community Board, and Councillor Fisher Wang as the Council representative to the Rural Community Board. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there questions? Happy to move? Second, Councillor. Are there any questions? Councillor McPherson. My eyes try to scan the room. Councillor McPherson.
Good, thanks. They're not so much questions about item 2, the nomination of council representatives. It's to do with the potential conflict with the constituencies of councillors at large. Their constituencies traverse the entire district, and this paper does not rule on the right of councillors at large to attend both the Lakes Community Board or the Rural Community Board meetings, nor does it rule on their capacity to have standing, to be recognised and to be heard. So I wondered if that issue could be clarified along with our appointments of these 2 representatives from council to each of these boards. Thank you.
Right, do you want to answer that, Una?
All we're doing here today is finalising the membership of this particular community, or of the 2 community boards. Councillors are totally able to attend the community board meetings, as many have done in the past, but they do not form part of the decision making of the community board, or either in the lakes or the rural.
So it is the practice that it is the councillor representative at council, where we don't have the community board reps at the table, to be able to report through issues that have been agreed by the community boards, because
sorry.
they're not at council.
Yeah, point of order. My question was about whether or not councillors at large, have voice at these meetings. Do they have standing at these meetings?
No. They can observe the meeting. You can always use the channels of reporting through the councillor of items that you'd like raised at them, but you don't have a voice there, because these are elected boards.
And can I just add to that, Madam Chair, that they are a separate entity through the electoral process.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and if I can just add, having had 2 years on the Lakes Community Board, there will be times when the council appointee will feel they need to abstain from a vote on a particular matter that the board takes a stance on, because given their at-large representative of the complete district, they may have to make a decision in the interests of the complete district rather than the community of interest represented by that board. And I uphold the comment that it's largely at the discretion of the chair if any other person in the room is going to have a voice at that meeting, be it a member of the public or another councillor. But the debate can only be the appointed members of the board, elected and appointed members of the board.
That's right. Thank you for clarifying that. So I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Recommendation 2, appointment of community board members to council committees, page 20. Thank you. Moved, Councillor Rotorua Tate. Seconded, Councillor Donaldson. Una, do you wish to speak to this one, please?
Just through you, Madam Mayor, I can probably just take this one as read. Here we've got appointments being put forward from both the Rural Community Board and the Lakes Community Board as to representatives from their boards onto the Operations and Monitoring Committee and the Strategy, Policy and Finance.
Thank you. and that's for those boards to nominate. Thank you. Are there any questions for clarification? Peter?
To your worship.
Yes, moved. Seconded. Councillor Rotorua. All those.
Sorry, is there a change because of that email Hilda sent to what's in the papers? Is there a
that they are named?
Oh, it's just that there was an email sent that Bryce was to be.
Yes, and so they are named as Jennifer Rothwell and Bryce Hurd to the
Sorry,
Rural
I'm
Board.
looking.
Got it?
Sorry, I'm looking at that, not that.
Yeah. Yes, so that's been amended accordingly. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. Moved now to additional responsibilities remuneration. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Moved Councillor Tapsell, seconded Councillor Wang. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. Una, can you overview this report?
So through you, Madam Chair, so this paper here outlines a proposal for additional responsibilities. The Remuneration Authority actually sets that pool of funding that is available for elected members' remuneration. It has changed somewhat in the way that the pool is decided upon. The criteria for that now includes a few more parameters and things which are outlined in your paper. I think it's worth noting that the pool has been established by the Remuneration Authority as being $714,084, and there are some requirements around the allocation of that pool. The first one is that the whole pool must be used, and that a base remuneration is set for elected members. The recommendation from the Remuneration Authority has been a base of $49,426, and then over and above that, remuneration is based on additional responsibilities and roles. It's been the experience of this council in the past of putting forward job descriptions to the Remuneration Authority, which outline those significant roles of leadership and chairmanship. So as you see in the paper before you today, there is a proposal based around those additional responsibilities. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to make some comments. Is this the appropriate time?
We really are only receiving this report. In February, if you remember our workshop, we'll be getting that wider paper back to councillors about the creating of livable communities and aspects of that some of you have expressed an interest in. This is just the leads.
Sorry, my question, Your Worship, was, is now the time for me to speak? I'd like to speak against the recommendations 2 and 3.
Yeah. So I need a mover and a seconder before councillors can speak. Do I have a mover for 2 and 3? That's the approval of the base salary and the following additional responsibilities. Moved Councillor Rotorua, seconded Councillor Donaldson. All those in favour, please. Oh no, open now for discussion.
Thank you. I've looked at the history of remuneration of roles since 2014. I've read the background documents provided, and thank you for all those. Some hard work there. But from my perspective, it shows a pattern that's consistent with something like 5 years of increasingly gouging ratepayers. And I'm profoundly concerned about these patterns.
Point of order, language, Madam Chair. Thank you. Inappropriate.
I apologise and withdraw for the word gouging. The facts are, and I'll go through them in just a moment, that the remuneration increases that are proposed vastly exceed the ratepayers' capacity to pay, and any estimate of the council's productivity.
I'm ruling that out of order. This is set by the Remuneration Authority, not by us.
I understand that.
And we are given a pool. Una, would you explain that? Clearly it's not understood. We don't make the decision about what you're paid. We're given a pool through which we must allocate the responsibilities. So it's not set.
I don't need the documents to be explained to me. I have read them all, as I said, but I have a view on these matters. I'd like to be heard. Can I proceed?
You certainly can, as long as they fit within the pool.
Well, what I've done is on the 5th of December, I provided a table to Council showing that all the compounding rates take increased by 33% over a 5-year period compared to the ratepayers' capacity to pay that compounded at 4%. There's a colossal difference. But I look at the role remuneration changes.
I'm ruling this out of order. You're making a case that we set these according to our rates ability to pay. We don't. This is set by the Remuneration Authority, Councillor McPherson. So where you're coming from is out of order.
Well, could I look more deeply then at the actual nature of the increases being proposed?
They're not increases. This is within the pool, as Una has explained to us.
Yes, so what I look at is the actual outcomes, and the outcomes themselves show the base for council return from last year to the coming year. The proposal is to increase by 15%.
So, Councillor McPherson, are you proposing that your base returns back to 49,000?
Point of order,
and gives
Madam
us
Chair.
some more in the pool?
No, point of order, please. I'm couching my arguments in terms of the remuneration appropriate to each of the roles. A personal attack to me, a personal comment to me about what I'm prepared to accept is beside the point and should not be entered into by me at all. I want to talk about the actual roles and the remuneration rates, and I'm pointing out that the increase proposed for councillors is 15%, deputy chairpersons 20%, the mayoral role is 26% increase, cultural ambassador 32% increase, the chairpersons of key committees 42%, and the deputy mayor by 43%. And I regard that these increases, levels of increase, are, from my perspective, on behalf of ratepayers, quite obscene. They don't match in any sense at all capacity to pay. Thank you.
And out of order, because this is not something that we apply for an increase to the Remuneration Authority. They set the pool for the country, and within the pool, we divvy up the pool according to the responsibilities. So I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? 2. 2 against. It's carried. Recommendation 4.
Order. Can that be recorded, the division?
You can have your name recorded. It's not a division. A division wasn't called for, but you have your name recorded against. Councillor, did you just indicate to the Secretary that you're against? But you didn't do it. You didn't vote. When I called, all those in favour and those against. So there were only 2 against when I called. And the motion was lost. You can't then change your vote. Right, we move now to item 7.4, the elected members' childcare allowance. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Moved Councillor Wang, seconded Councillor Donaldson, that the report elected members' childcare allowance be received. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Una, can you overview this also as to how this came about?
So through you, Madam Chair, this is a new allowance which has been set aside again by the Remuneration Authority to provide for a childcare allowance for elected members. There is no right way of providing this allowance. What the Remuneration Authority has proposed is that an amount capped at $6,000 per child per annum is available, and that does require the appropriate paperwork to correspond with that payment. I'll take any questions if there is.
Are there any questions?
Ask something. I think this is really good, very innovative. This is new. Is this first time on our plate or throughout the country?
That's correct, yes.
The Remuneration Authority in the past came to us for discussions about how remuneration could be reflected differently. And for some councils this was an issue. It wasn't an issue that we put forward, but it has been accepted nationally by the Remuneration Authority. Councillor Rotorua.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly would like to speak in support of this, and I find it a wonderful, well, not an innovative approach, but a necessary approach today. If we want to see, our community wants to see and hear younger voices around the table, then our young mothers who believe that they've got a contribution to make to their city, that this will now actually, I suspect it might be an opportunity to think, well, now I can, with this help that's been provided. So I'm very supportive of this. I'd like to encourage all councillors to vote accordingly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right, well, there are no more questions. Right, do I have a mover for and a seconder for the motions that council adopts the policy as written, 2 and 3, and seconded Mercy? Moved Councillor Maxwell, I think, seconded Councillor Yates. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. It is definitely a very good signal. We've struggled to get young parents to be able to stand for council and manage childcare and looking after their children. Item 5, recommendation 5, adopting our code of conduct, which you've all got a copy of. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report, that the report adopting the Code of Conduct 2019 to 2022 be received? Moved Councillor Yates, seconded Councillor Tapsell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. Una, do you want to oversee the summary of our workshop?
So through you, Madam Chair, the development of the Code of Conduct has come about this time through your work undertaken in the forum on the 29th of November. So what we've got in that Code of Conduct is the summary of the values that you have worked up yourselves to come up with the way that you will work and the values that you will work by. So that forms the chapter around good governance. That's followed by a set of sort of guiding principles for the way and interactions between staff and the community. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Councillor Bentley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Una, do you have this available in a hard copy?
It has been provided to you on Stella, and we can provide hard copies following any amendments that you request to be made today.
So we're still able to amend.
So it can be made available. Is this saying that you are going to make it available, or is it just on a special request?
So I guess in line with the practice that we've been taking is that everything is available to you on Stella. Not everybody wants a hard copy. If you request a hard copy, I can get one for you.
Yes, Councillor Kapung.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Una, just a question. In the Code of Conduct, you said that councillors should observe the guidelines the CE puts in place regarding contact with employees. What is the guideline, or where are they?
You want to speak to that?
So effectively, we covered this topic in the induction process, and quite simply, the guideline is to approach directly the second tier managers, general management level, and that is actually the point of contact for council staff. There may be situations where you deal with other staff, but the preferred first point of contact is actually our second tier executive team, essentially.
Which is on the bottom of page 5, relationships with staff. Councillor Rotorua-Tate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The forum held on the 29th of November I did find actually very, very helpful. It pulled out, it encouraged all of us to think about the way we operate around the board table, around council table, but more importantly, it stressed, particularly in the last hour, that we need to hold not only ourselves accountable for our behaviour, but we also need to hold each and every one of our fellow councillors accountable as well. So I just feel that I thought the forum was very good, and these are actually ours. This is not imposed by anybody else. This is what we actually decided upon on the 29th, and it came from each and every one of us contributed to the code of conduct. So I will support it, and certainly, if my behaviour isn't above the line, then I would expect my fellow councillors to call me on that, and indeed I will do the same, because that's what we agreed to at our forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? There appear to be none. So I'm now asking for a mover and a seconder, and I thank you for summing it up. I think it's caught the workshop's intentions very, very well. A mover and a seconder that Council resolves to adopt the Code of Conduct 2019 to 2002. We have a mover, Councillor Rotorua-Tate, seconder, Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. And for those councillors who do want a hard copy, please ask Una later. And now that we've adopted this at full council, this is the document that we use, because we were working under the old Code of Conduct, so this is the new Code of Conduct. Right, recommendation 6. A mover and a seconder to receive the report, the Bay of Plenty Triennial Agreement, be received. Councillor Tapsell, seconded. Councillor Donaldson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. Una, not a lot to overview here, but this is process.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just going to say here we'll take this as read, and if there are any questions, we can answer those.
Councillor
Have one through you, Madam Mayor, to Una. I read in there where South Waikato have withdrawn, and really, I wondered why they were there in the first place. It is a Bay of Plenty triennial, and so I hope that they've withdrawn not because of any.
I can speak to that. The previous mayor just had an affinity with the Bay of Plenty, and so asked to be a member of the triennial. The new mayor, or second term mayor, Mayor Shattock, is finding it easier to work with Waikato. So that's all. Yeah. Yes, Councillor Rotorua-Tate.
It must be because we've got a beautiful region here in Rotorua and Bay of Plenty that I'm aware that there are 3 mayors who actually have houses in our, or holiday homes in our own region, so we must have a beautiful region to live in.
The questions. Councillor Rotorua-Tate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just looking at Appendix 1, possible areas of collaboration, and I see all the areas there. But the one that was noticeable to me that was missing was, and I thought would have been very helpful, seeing everyone's working collaboratively and trying to support each other, would have been around iwi relations, because we do, and I just thought that might have been something that possibly we could be leading the way in there. And I just wondered if that might, I mean, I suppose you decide yourselves what goes on the agendas.
And there is a process underway at the moment where the CEs are looking at, are there other ways we could collaborate, so we could carry that through in preparation of the first paper that we receive next year.
Say that, Madam Chair, because as we know, there's a couple of things that have happened even in this early time in the new triennium, but with treaty settlements, etc., iwi relations is absolutely key. So if there's any support that we can give and how we've gone forward, that might be helpful for the others. Thank you.
And that's very true. There is a wonderful informal network of phone calls for assistance with some of the challenges that new mayors faced straight after the election, that our ministers are already picking up. The thought that they automatically go to a recount in the instance of a tied vote, a tied return. Yeah, but that's a good one for our Chief Executive to carry forward. Councillor Donaldson?
Thank you, Worship. Look, I'm happy to move parts 2 and 3, but with a slight change to part 3. And I've already pointed out to Una that on page 41, the first bullet point under 2, Statement of Intent, doesn't align with the current purpose of local government as amended. And I'm presuming it can't be until the next triennial that gets clarified. It's obviously been a cut and paste from the old one. So could I suggest that part 3 ends with the words subject to any minor edits? And I'm happy to move 2 and 3.
So you wanted that in 2, any minor edits?
3, that Council approves the Bay of Plenty Triennial Agreement 2019-2022, subject to any minor edits. And I was just highlighting that that's the old purpose of local government in that statement of intent.
I'd second that amendment. Now we need a mover for 2 and 3. We'll take as one. Moved Councillor Donaldson, second Councillor Wang. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Where there are items that other councillors think could be of value regionally to be discussed, do feed those through to me. And that was one that we did last term about community safety. So we had the regional commander of police come to talk to the triennial about issues in the Bay of Plenty, Inc. And that was a valuable discussion. Right, a resolution now to go on to the public excluded. There are 6 items for consideration in the public excluded: the museum contract, the Shimpak contract, appointment of Te Tato or Te Arawa nominee to council committees, plan change 10 update, property disposal policy, and CE recruitment process. Do I have a mover to move it? Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Seconder? Yep. Oh, and the reasons I must give you are to enable commercial or industrial negotiations, to protect a person's privacy, and to protect all communications between a legal advisor and clients. Right, a mover, Councillor Rokawatata. Seconder? Councillor Yates. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried, and we'll have a 5-minute break as some are having to leave early, and we'll have a cup of coffee while the public leave.